All right, so find the domain of this function. To find the domain it means what x values can I put in without creating imaginaries. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus in right here. That's the key. Doesn't what's inside have to be 0 or positive? So what's inside has to be 0 or positive, which means it doesn't have to be greater than or equal to 0. It could be 0 or positive, which means greater than 0. So if I solve that, I'll get my domain. And to solve that, I simply minus 6. And I get x is greater than or equal to negative 6. Done. That is my domain. I can only plug values in that are negative 6 or bigger. So if I try putting negative 5 in there, I'm going to get imaginaries. Okay, anything smaller than negative 6 is going to create imaginaries. Now for this question, we're going to graph this function and complete the table for 3 points with integer outputs. So I'm going to put in 3 values that will give me integer outputs. Integers are positive or negative whole numbers. Basically, I don't want decimals. And imaginaries would be dumb because you can't graph an imaginary. So the key is I want to plug in numbers here so that I can get nice whole number, positive or negative. So we're going to go for that. All right. So first thing I want to do is think about A, H, and K. So what I'm going to do here is, could I technically put a plus 0? From that, can you understand that your HK, isn't it going to be negative 2, 0? Isn't HK negative 2, 0? And your A value, isn't your A value right here in front? So isn't A equal to negative 4? So to make a really quick sketch, can't I simply go to negative 2, 0, put a dot? And since my A value is negative 4, can I simply go over 1 and down 1, 2, 3, 4? There's a dot. Now there's another trick to get more A values, and what I do is I go over 3 and down 4 again. This one is over 3 and down your A value. This one's over 1 and down your A value. Oops, sorry, that should be negative 4. So there's my other dot. So that right there is a sketch of your square root graph. Again, you go HK, let's label that. That right there is negative 2, 0, which is HK. And you have HK, and from that, you go over 1, down A, and you go over 3, down A. That's a trick. All right, so the question is, we have to fill in this table. So let's show you how you do the table route instead of the trick. The trick for quick sketching I just showed you. So let's do the table. Because if you can make the table, you just plot the dots. So we're kind of doing it a different way now. Now, hopefully you understand the first value you're going to put in your table is HK. Hopefully you realize, again, what we're going to do here is we're going to put HK right there, which is negative 2, 0. Our first value in any table with a square root is HK. Boom. Bam. Got it. Next, I want to find a value here that would make a nice square root. So the next nice square root would be 1. So what would I put into here to make this equal to 1? Well, if you think about that, can't I use negative 1? Well, negative 1 plus 2 gives me 1. Okay. Okay, what would be another number that makes 4? Because 4 is my next nice square root. What plus 2 gives you 4? And hopefully you realize, oh, that would be 2. Okay, finding some nice values. Now, could you go and plug those in and crunch them? Yeah. So g of negative 1 would be negative 4. And then you put the negative 1 plus 2, which would be negative 4 times the square root of 1, which is negative 4. All right, so this would right here, this would be negative 4. So negative 1, negative 4. And if we look at my graph, was that right? Is that negative 1, negative 4? Now, could I plug in 2 as well? Yeah, but let me show you some shortcuts. All right, you could technically go down here and plug in negative 2. Actually, let's just calculate it just to practice. So let's do g of 2 This is for practice sake. It would be 2 plus 2, which would be negative 4 times the square root of 4, which is negative 4 times 2, which is negative 8. All right, so is that 2, negative 8 right there? So my table checked it. Now, if you didn't know my shortcut, could you technically just make this table and then plot the dots? Yeah, you can use shortcut or do the table. Now, on the quiz, you have to make the table and you have to make the graph. So you might as well just do both to check it. They should check each other. So they should agree. So make sure you think it through to make sure they both agree. Now, I want to show you a couple tricks to making the table. Do you remember here how we went over 1 over 3? So don't your x values, think about this, aren't you going to be adding 1, adding 3? Do you see that? Now, if I wanted another number, could I add 5? If I want to do another number, when I add 5, make it 7 out there? On the bottom, you hopefully see a pattern. Aren't you shrinking by 4? Aren't you adding your a value on the bottom? See that trick? See how you start with HK. On the top, aren't you adding 1, adding 3, adding 5, adding 7? On the bottom, aren't you adding A, adding A, adding A? Those are tricks. Don't have to know them. They're just interesting patterns. And the more you do it, look for that pattern. It repeatedly shows itself. If you find nice, good square roots. This is the square root of 0 when you plug it in. This creates a square root of 1. This creates, up here, a square root of 4. So make sure you can make the table. Make sure you can sketch it. They're both useful. So last, we're going to sketch this cube root using 3 key points. So I don't need the table here. So I want to get the 3 key points. To start this off, to get your 3 key points, is I first need to find h and k. So hk is going to be 3, negative 5. And then I'm going to plot that. 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, negative 5 is right there. That right there is hk, 3, negative 5. Then I'm going to find my a value, which is right here in front. There's my a value. My a is 1/2. So from my hk, I'm going to go over 1 and up 1/2. That's up 1/2. It's kind of small. Over 1, up 1/2. And then the other direction, I'm going to go over 1, but down 1/2. And then I'm going to sketch my graph. And a cube root looks like a square root on the right side, but on the left side, it's a reciprocal. It's not reciprocal. It's a like a rotation of it, 180 degrees. So once you get your square root sketch right there, the other side is just like a 180-degree rotation around HK to create the other side. And that right there is a cube root graph. We're done. Do I have 1, 2, 3 key points? Yeah. We don't need a table. We don't need to go overcomplicate it. We're done.